video, I just wanted to show you what I'm tracking, what kind of information. Okay, what did this get all? There we go. Okay. So this is my data tracking sheet for my current cross-country trip. So over here you can see I've got all the stops um, that I make, and then or these are all superchargers, and then the ones in bold are the ones that I stayed overnight in. And then in this column, I'm tracking how many kilowatt hours it took me to get there. And then I'm also tracking my start and completed charge time. And then this column is the miles to get to that destination. So for example, here, St. Joseph, Michigan is 86 miles from the previous destination. This column is the elevation. This is the change in elevation from the previous site. So like here, Country Club Hills is is a loss of 44 feet in elevation compared to the previous. And then this, based on the distance and the number of kilowatt hours, I have it calculating my watt hours per miles. And then I have conversion factors converting that to watt hours per kilometer and elevation change in meters. So on the trip out, I would forget to log certain things. Like once in a while, I forgot to write down my how many kilowatt hours it took, or when I finished charging, or something like that. So there are some gaps in the data going out. We'll come back to that later. No, I'll do that now actually. And then these are some helpful charts, just as a reference. This is the distance from the previous site to the supercharger. So, for example, um, and I sort of said this before, so Springfield, Illinois is 75 miles from Normal, Illinois. And then there's a supercharger here in St. Charles, Missouri, but I skipped it because I had enough energy. So from Springfield, Illinois to Columbia is 184 miles. So this is the distance between the superchargers, all graphed out. This is the elevation of each supercharger site in feet. So you can see how the elevation changes, with the highest being in Silverthorne, Colorado, just under 9,000 feet. And then kind of coming and going here. So this is helpful. For example, if I'm charging here in Hays, Kansas, I know I'm going to be going up in elevation and possibly using more energy because of that. And then here's an experimental table that I'm going to see if this shows anything interesting. I have graphed here two things. This is the watt hours per mile that was used to get to each of these destinations. So, for example, Country Club Hills, I was at 249 watt hours per mile. That's in green. And then the gray here is the change in elevation. So again, Country Club Hills, I went down 44 feet. The next supercharger, I went up 191 feet. The next one, I went down 311 feet relative to the previous one. This is not relative to sea level. This is the one that I skipped, and on down the line. What I'm trying to see here is, as I graph this, I wanted to see if there was a correlation between the change in elevation and the watt hours per mile. And I mean, there kind of is. So, for example, here, well, let's go here. The Glenwood Springs charger, that is a significant decrease in elevation, almost 3,000 feet from the previous supercharger. And it's not that far, so this is a significant downhill curve. And you can see that my average watt hour per mile was 185 in this section. And compare that to the next section, which I decreased another 1,170 feet in elevation, and my watt hour per mile was 268. So it sort of correlates, but then in some of these areas, I guess here I lost a little and I was at 249. Here I gained elevation and I was at 312. But here I lost elevation and I was at 324. And same here. Here I gained 145 feet and I used 316 watt hours per mile. But then after that, I lost 92 feet and I used 382. So there's other factors here, I think, and particularly probably speed. Sometimes when I have enough energy towards the end of a leg of a trip, um, and I know I'm going to make it with energy to spare, I'll drive at the maximum speed. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But you can't deny the effect here, like in these drastic um, elevation changes. Um, yeah, so for example, here I gained 1,700 feet and I was at 368 watt hours per mile. So, it seems to make a difference when there's a drastic change in elevation, but very little difference if it's not very significant. And lastly, this is a conversion of that previous chart to um, scientific units, so elevation change in meters, and then watt hours per kilometer. And I also have a different graph style, which is actually a little bit more, um, it's a little easier to read, which is interesting. So the red here is the watt hours per kilometer for a given leg for each one. And you can see that's kind of at a pretty steady state here, maybe a slight increase over here. And then the gray kind of in the background, mainly just for reference, is the change in elevation in meters. And again, so you can see it's fairly constant here, even in these gains of elevation. And this would be in the middle of Kansas and eastern Colorado. But then, with these significant changes here, actually, this is Silverthorne. I forgot to record how many kilowatt hours I used getting up there, so I don't have that. But here, where there's drastic loss of elevation, you can see the difference in the watt hours per kilometer used. So this graph style actually shows it a little bit better. I might change the watt hours per mile, the American units, to this style as well. So anyway, the analysis is not complete. There were some, areas where I didn't get I didn't get all the information in that I shared. So I'm hoping to be a little more consistent on the way out, and we'll see what the information shows. So it's kind of fun.